idea. I think it's kind of silly and unrealistic. And I think we're coming out of that. As we get all polyamorous and non-binary and queefy and all this stuff, I think we're slowly moving away from that. But I think a lot of the ladies, more majority women, like marriage, like the idea of it. Like I'm a fiance now, or whatever you call it. I'm engaged. And I mean, she is just woo-wee, going hog wild. She's loving it. She's got the dress thing, pick a venue, blah, and she's deep in, whereas I feel guilty because I'm just like, jeez.
Is it planned already? When's the wedding?
Squid Game? I'm just living life. Yeah. It's planned. It's in New Orleans. I'm from there. And next year. Are you married?
No.
Virgin?
Of course, yeah.
I can't imagine. I bet you'd be great in bed. And you're ripped.
You can now discover hundreds of unique and exciting grocery items that will be delivered to you. Introducing Weed.
The following is a conversation with Andrew Huber, his second time on the podcast. He's a neuroscientist at Stanford, a world-class researcher and educator. Now he has a new podcast on YouTube and all the usual places called Huberman Lab that I can't recommend highly enough. Quick mention of our sponsors: Masterclass online courses, Four Sigmatic Mushroom Coffee, Magic Spoon Low Carb Cereal, and BetterHelp Online Therapy. Click the sponsor links to get a discount. By the way, Masterclass is special and want to support this podcast long term. So if you're on the fence, now is the time to sign up. I'm pretty sure Andrew will have a neuroscience masterclass on him soon enough, though his podcast is basically a weekly masterclass in itself. As a side note, we say that Andrew is a friend and a new collaborator. We're working on a paper together about a topic we're both really passionate about, at the intersection of neuroscience and machine learning. But that's probably many months away from being published. Still, I'm really excited about this work. He's one of the smartest and kindest people I have the pleasure of talking to on this podcast, so I hope we'll talk many more times in the future. If you enjoy this thing, subscribe on YouTube, review it on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify, support it on Patreon, or connect with me on Twitter at Lex Friedman. And now, here's my conversation with Andrew Huberman. Why do humans need sleep? Let's go with a big first question.
Well, the answer I'll start with is the one that I always default to when there's a why question, which is I wasn't consulted in the design phase. So, so I wriggle my way out of giving an absolute answer, right? But there's one mechanism that's very clear, that's super important, which is that the longer we are awake, the more adenosine accumulates in our brain. And adenosine binds to adenosine receptors, no surprise there, and it creates the feeling of sleepiness, independent of time of day or night. So there are two mechanisms. One is we get sleepy as adenosine accumulates. The longer we've been awake, the more adenosine is accumulated in our system. But how sleepy we get for a given amount of adenosine depends on where we are in this so-called circadian cycle. And the circadian cycle is just this very, very well-conserved oscillation. It's a temperature oscillation where you go from a low point. Typically, if you're awake during the day and you're asleep at night, your lowest temperature point will be like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and then your temperature will start to creep up as you wake up in the morning, and then it'll peak in the late afternoon, and then it'll start to drop again toward the evening, and then you get to sleep again. That oscillation in temperature takes 24 hours, plus or minus. Yeah, plus or minus an hour. And I don't, even though I wasn't consulted in the design, how sleepy or how awake you feel also depends on where you are in this temperature oscillation that takes 24 hours.
Okay, so that's fascinating. So there's a bunch of oscillations going on, and then they kind of, through the evolutionary process, have evolved to all be aligned somewhat, and they interplay. So it's, you said your body temperature goes up and down. There's chemicals in your brain that oscillate, and then there's the actual oscillation of the sun in the sky. So all of that together has some impact on each other, and somehow that all results in us wanting to go sleep every night.
Right. So, and we can get right into the meat of this. So I guess we just dove right in. But the temperature oscillation is the effector of the circadian clock. So every cell in our body has a 24-hour rhythm that's dictated by genes like clock, PER, BMAL. This is one of the great successes of biology. They give a Nobel Prize to Reppert. I don't know if Reppert got it, forgive me, but sorry if you got it, Steve. Congratulations. If you didn't, I'm sorry, I wasn't on the committee. Nonetheless, did beautiful work, Steve Reppert and others. But Mike Rauschbach and like other people worked out these mechanisms in flies and bacteria and mammals. There are these genes that create 24-hour oscillations in gene expression, etc., in every cell of our body. But what aligns those is a signal from the master circadian clock, which sits right above the roof of the mouth, called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And that clock synchronizes all the clocks of the body to this general temperature rhythm by way of controlling systemic temperature, which makes perfect sense. If you want to create a general oscillation in all the tissues and organs of the body, use temperature. And so that work on temperature, if you want to explore it further, was Joe Takahashi, who was at Northwestern, now at UT Southwestern in Dallas. And it is absolutely clear that humans do better on a diurnal schedule, sorry Lex, than a nocturnal schedule. Because you could say, well, provided I sleep and push adenosine back downhill, which is what happens when we sleep, adenosine is then reduced, and provided I am on more or less a 24-hour schedule, why should it matter that I'm awake when the sun's out and I'm asleep when the sun is down? But it turns out that if you look at health metrics, people that are strictly nocturnal do far worse on immune function, on metabolic function, etc., than people who are diurnal, who are awake during the daytime. And animals that are nocturnal, it's the opposite. And animals that are so-called crepuscular, which tend to be active at dawn and at dusk, this is a beautiful system. I won't go down that rabbit hole, but these are animals whose visual systems operate best. They tend to be predators like mountain lions. They have optimized their waking times for the times when the animals they eat can't see well in those light conditions. But given rod cone ratios in their eyes, the mountain lion is picking off. It's like when you see special forces and they are looking through night vision goggles and they have a clear advantage, right? They are seeing in the dark. That's basically what it's like to be a mountain lion as opposed to a bunny rabbit.
Would you say that a lot of these cycles evolved in the predator-prey relationships of the different throughout the food chain? So it's basically all somehow has to do with survival in this complicated web of predators and prey?
Almost certainly. There had to have been a time in which humans being awake and active at night as opposed to during the day led to higher levels of lethality. And probably in particular kids. You imagine kids running around in the dark and getting where there are a lot of animals that can see really well under those conditions and humans can't. And this would be all pre-electricity. Even if you're carrying a torch, the range of illumination on a torch is nothing compared to what a nighttime predator like a large cat or something can do. I mean, they can see everything they need to in order to eat us and not the other way around.
So one fascinating thing you said is that blew my mind, and we went right past it, which is the temperature is a really powerful, like, if you were to think about the ways that different parts of the body, different systems in the body would communicate with each other, temperature would be a really good one. And that just, I mean, maybe it's obvious, but it kind of blew my mind just now that, yeah, these systems are all distributed.
Right.
And they have to they're not actually sending signals, but they're coordinating. They need some sort of universal thing to look at in order to coordinate. And temperature is a nice one to build around. And that way you could control the behavior of all these different systems by controlling the temperature.
Right. It's attractive to think of a mechanism where this master circadian clock secretes a peptide or something that goes and locks to receptors in all the cells and gets it just right. But that leaves far too much room for variability, binding affinities. Cells in a lot of parts of our body are at different stages of maturation. They're turning over, liver cells and so forth. And for instance, we have a clock in our gut and in our liver.